Do you want to talk about another piece that that readers may be interested in locating in the Handbook of Texas
One
that
of the
comes out
things
of the
that,
project?
yeah, one of the things that we've tried to do, besides to talk about a variety of topics and entries in the Handbook of Tejano History, women, of course, and individual leaders' biographies, movements, events. We have tried to introduce new topics as well. Another topic that we introduced is one on the Compania Volante, which I'd like to just mention as an example of that. Compania Volante means, technically it means flying squadron. When the Spaniards established Texas, they brought with them onto this frontier a new concept of law enforcement and military protection for the civilian population that they had brought from the medieval times of their history in Spain, on the Iberian Peninsula in Europe. They had had to conflict with Muslim, Arab invaders who had invaded Spain, and they had fought, the Spaniards had fought for hundreds of years. So when they came to what they called the New World, and they founded Mexico and South America, and including Texas, they brought this concept of a military defense system for a sparsely populated frontier. And that was a light mounted cavalry unit. Not 200 soldiers, not 1,000, not 10,000 soldiers, but a very mobile, mounted, horse-mounted light cavalry squadron of no more than about 5 to 7 men who could be highly mobile. They patrolled the entire frontera, the entire frontier of Texas. The rest of Mexico literally dropped off and quit using this Compania Volante by the 1800 period. But Texas was still a frontera. Frontera was still a frontier of northern Mexico, and so Texas kept the Compania Volante method. And they had a squadron, a flying squadron in Béjar, in San Antonio. There was one in Victoria, there was one in Laredo, there were flying squadrons. And so as the Tejanos then established government and the community in Texas, and they invited Anglo-Americans to come in and colonize Texas along with the Tejanos from Mexico and Spain, they continued this tradition of having this light-mounted cavalry. The Compania Volante were not national military army troops. They were local volunteers, like a militia. They had military status, but they also had political status. The commander of the Compania Volante could vote in any city council that he went to. They had extraterritorial jurisdiction. A Compania Volante had authority in any city, any municipality across the frontier of Texas. They also had the authority to deputize. They initially had the authority of summary execution. That had come from Spain, where Queen Isabella had told the initial units that if they were 200 miles out on the frontier and they captured more people than in their own squadron, they didn't have to bring those people back. They could execute them on the spot. So the Compania Volante was a very rough, highly trained, highly skilled unit of mounted civilian or paramilitary soldiers, or civilians. They were local boys. Juan Seguin was the commander of the Compania Volante in San Antonio, Béjar. They had certain accoutrements. Each of them had one major horse and 2 or 3, 4, or even 5 spare horses that whenever they went on patrol, they would take along with them, because their patrols would extend 100 to 200 miles away from their hometown. So they needed the spare horses, especially if they engaged enemy. They were always offensive. They didn't have a fort. They were always out looking for the enemy or troublemakers, brigands. And when they engaged them, their motto was perseguir y batir, pursue and strike. And they did. We have the minutes of the Compania Volantes here at the archives, and almost every day they engaged cattle rustlers, hostile Native American tribes or whatever. So when the Anglo-Americans came in, the Tejanos told them, you can come in Texas and live with us, but you must establish your own flying squadrons. So the Anglo-Americans started establishing their flying squadrons, and they started calling them ranging companies. When the U.S. Army got here in 1846, they were called the Texas Rangers. But the Texas Rangers were nothing more than Anglo-Americans who had adopted the Compania Volante method of light cavalry, highly mobile, offensive, pursue and strike, or as the Anglo-Americans said, search and destroy. In fact, the U.S. Army and the U.S. Cavalry owe a lot to the Tejano Compania Volante for the inception of this light, mobile method of fighting in law enforcement.